Hey, what's up, Superdads? Today I want to talk to you about how to break problematic patterns of behavior. And these behaviors could really be anything. It could be that you're struggling to stick with your diet, that you can't get the motivation to exercise, that you have issues controlling your anger, for example, that you tend to use the language that you are not proud of, that you would rather be speaking in a different way to the people in your life. Well, whatever the reason, whatever the issue is that you're dealing with, if it's a pattern that you want to get rid of, then this is the way to do it. First, we need to start with how do you know it's a pattern? A pattern, very basically, is just anything that has happened 3 or more times you can consider a pattern. So 1 time is a data point, 2 times you can think of it as a coincidence, but if it happens 3 times, the chances are that there's something about who you are currently, whether it's physically, psychologically, emotionally, and the environment in which you find yourself, the relationships included, that is creating a pattern of behavior, and it will probably show up again unless you do something to change it. So how do we do it? Well, when I'm working with somebody who is struggling with a pattern that just keeps recurring in their life, there is one giant roadblock that they all seem to run into. And it's funny because it's not actually a roadblock. I'll get to that in a second. That roadblock is that they get frustrated because it keeps happening to them again and again. And the frustration itself demotivates them, gets them to give up on the project. What they're failing to recognize is that recognizing that you have failed again is itself progress. If you think about the 4 stages of mastery, which I've talked about in other videos, you start with unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Then you move to conscious incompetence, which means you now recognize the places where you're failing. That then leads to conscious competence, where you're able to pay attention and do it correctly. And finally to unconscious competence, where you're able to do it correctly without so much paying attention. But those 2 middle stages there, conscious incompetence, consciousness of what you're doing is the key feature of it. And since we have to go to conscious incompetence before we can go to conscious competence, what that equates to when rubber hits the road is that you feel like you're getting worse rather than getting better. It's progress, but it shows up as you performing less well to your own awareness, because you're now aware of how many times you failed, whereas before you were just unaware of those failures. And so this is where progress can often feel like you're going in the wrong direction, because you're more aware of your failures and mistakes. But it is, in fact, progress because it's increased awareness. And the really big mistake that people make is when they become aware that they did it again, they screwed up in the same way again, they repeated the same problematic behavior, they punish themselves for that recognition. They say, I did it again, I'm so stupid. But what you're doing when you do that is you're not punishing the problematic behavior. You're not punishing the person who engaged in the problematic behavior. What you're punishing is the recognition of the problematic behavior, because that's what just happened, right? In terms of the effect of feedback, this is super important. The more tightly coupled the feedback is to the behavior, meaning the less time there is between the behavior and the feedback, the stronger the effect will be. So you could do the behavior and then recognize that you did the behavior and then punish yourself. What you're actually punishing the most is not the behavior, because the behavior happened before the recognition, so there's more temporal space there. What you're punishing the most, predominantly punishing, is the recognition of your failing, of your mistake. And so what you're training yourself to do then is to not recognize in the future, because your subconscious, your conscious mind doesn't want you heaping shame upon it. So what is it going to do? It's going to retreat and say, fine, I'm sorry I even mentioned, I'm sorry I even brought it up. I'm sorry I pointed out that we did this thing again that you told me you didn't want to do. But apparently what you really don't want to do is recognize that you're doing that thing that you said you didn't want to do. So how do we flip this? We need to reward that. When you become aware that you did it again, you recognize, I screwed up in the same way again. I want you to say, all right, I'm recognizing, I'm making progress, I'm moving a step forward. Give yourself a pat on the back unless it's too goofy for you. High five yourself unless that's too goofy for you. But somewhere in your brain, in some way that registers with you, I want you to say, all right, that's progress. That's progress. And we never want to denigrate progress. All progress is positive. It's all desirable. So anytime you see it, reward it. And that way you'll move forward. What will happen is you'll start becoming aware of the failing more and more quickly. Instead of recognizing that you screwed up minutes, hours later, you'll start recognizing that you screwed up more immediately following the behavior. Keep rewarding it, until you are now becoming aware not only that you might be doing the behavior, I'm presently, this is that behavior again, it's showing up. So your awareness has collapsed in on the action. Your awareness and your action have collapsed into one, and now you're aware that you're doing it while you're doing it, and you can take action in the moment. But even prior to that, and this is where the gold really is you become aware of the precursors of the action that you want to limit yourself, that you want to prevent yourself from doing. And almost always those precursors are going to show up somewhere physically in your body. They will be embodied precursors. Almost any one of the mistakes, the problematic behaviors that you want to get rid of, I guarantee, is tied to some emotional state. It's you getting emotional in some way, probably that you're afraid of something, and fear leading to anger, the sort of the Jedi path, or the path to the dark side, I should say, right? Some fear, loss of control leading to fear, this sort of thing. This is an emotion, for example, that often leads people to do behaviors that they don't want to do. But it could be, a laziness. It could be like, I feel run down. I don't want to track my meal, or I don't want to, eat something healthy, or I want junk food, or I don't feel like working out today. What you'll start to recognize is the embodiment, the physical embodiment of the emotion that is the precursor to the actual behavior. And once you get to there, now you have the ability to cut it off at the pass, to stop it before it permeates into the system and turns into behavior. And the way you do that is just by slowing things down, recentering yourself, being present, instead of getting caught up in the emotional flow and, thinking about the past and regretting it, or thinking about the future. Just be now and here. And I know it might sound corny to some of you, to those of you who don't know yet, but if you know, you know. This is where the key to all behavior change is going to lie. So when you can find the embodiment, the embodied precursors, now slow it down, take some deep breaths, think about what you really want, because discipline, self-discipline that is nothing more than remembering what you really want when you need to remember it to make the right choice. That's all it is. And the way you do that is by being present and being aware and actually paying attention to what the hell is going on. And so mindfulness recently, in my opinion, the fact that there's a chapter in every single book I read about, you should meditate, you should practice mindfulness, blah, 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 blah. But these people, what they always miss, in my opinion, is they always talk about the productivity. It'll increase your productivity, or help you manage stress, or it's good for your health. And all of these things are important. But really, at the end of the day, the most important thing is what will help you to be the person that you want to be. And in my opinion and my experience, there is nothing more important to being the person that you want to be than actually being present in the moment. And so mindfulness is training yourself to pay attention to what's actually happening now, so that you can recognize when you're about to head in a direction that you don't want to. You can slow things down, and you can make a different choice that's more in line with your values, that's more in line with the ideal version of yourself, the version of yourself that you find inspiring and that pulls you towards a better future. All right, so I hope that that's helpful for some of you. If you want to check out some of the programs, these are all workout programs. They're down below. 3 Minute Muscles is a free one, but then we got Hourglass for the ladies out there. We got Senior for the elderly citizens out there, and then there's a dumbbell course and the home bodyweight course. All of them take a really short amount of time, and to connect it to a little bit to the theme of today's video, they do encourage you to be very present and mindful with what you're doing, about developing that presence even while you're doing something physical with your body, because that's a great way to train it. I've actually recently, in the last 6 months or so, kind of fallen off of meditating, but it doesn't mean I feel any less present, because I find other ways to practice it, and one of those is through how I exercise. So thank you so much for your attention. Take it easy, everybody, and go be super.